Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wind Down Wednesday, episode 43. I wanted to take a brief second tonight to say thank you to everyone who watched last week's show. It felt really important to me to be able to share my tribute to my friend and mentor, Sherry Ford. And I say this a lot, I maybe say this every week, but this space that we create when we meet together like this, it's a supportive space, it's a loving space, it's a space of giving, but also receiving. And last week, I really felt that I was receiving from all of you. I felt that you were holding space for me to share what I needed to say. And it was just such a beautiful exchange. So thank you to everyone who participated in last week's show. And I want to say something briefly before we get into tonight's topic. I want to say something about Mother's Day, which is coming up this weekend. Mother's Day, it's very complicated for me, and I've talked pretty frequently about my history of infertility and miscarriages. And what I want to say is something that I've been saying for a few years that I now kind of start to see reflected back. And I love it, and it's so beautiful. So I just want to say that motherhood comes in so many forms. Essentially, motherhood is about holding space for your children or whatever it is that you're mothering, and it's about nurturing. And so many of us do this in our lives in so many ways. Maybe we're a physical mother, maybe we're a spiritual mother, maybe we've chosen to work in a profession where we're nurturing, where we're holding space for others, maybe we're a teacher or a counselor. I think that I like to see Mother's Day as a celebration of all forms of motherhood, of that beautiful holding space, of nurturing. And it can be complicated if you come from a traumatic background. Maybe you felt that you were mothering yourself growing up, or you were mothering your siblings. Maybe you were the mother hen in your friend group. And so I celebrate motherhood, and I honor motherhood in all its forms, whether that takes the form of physically raising children, which is such an amazing thing to do, or it's more spiritual, or you're raising a group of children in the form of teaching or holding space in that way. And I'd like us to intentionally take a moment or two on Sunday to hold space for the people that motherhood is a complicated issue. Maybe they don't have a good relationship with their mother. Maybe they're feeling some grief and loss because they've lost their mother or a child. I recently lost the person I call my spiritual mama. So let's hold a little bit of space for people who are struggling, who maybe are having a hard time on Mother's Day, and just take a moment to honor that and to hold space for whatever the experience is. Whatever your experience is, we talk about that over and over again. Your experience is valid. So if it's a day that someone has told you, you should feel good today, and you don't feel good today, that's okay. Honor that. Hold space for that. Okay, so tonight we are going to talk about transitions. And I am in a transitional period. If you haven't figured it out by now, these topics tend to come from what I'm working on in my personal life. But I've also talked to so many other people right now that are kind of in a transitional period. And we're in a transitional period as a society, as humankind right now, this whole pandemic and how are we coming out of it? And, there's a lot of back and forth when you're in transition. So my transition personally has been about letting go of some old fear-based beliefs that I've talked about pretty extensively on the show and opening to the new. And sometimes this feels like a really jerky process. It doesn't feel very smooth. It feels like we're kind of back and forth. We're in and out of these old behaviors, new behaviors. It's a little bit like a tug of war sometimes. And I see that reflected right now in society at large. We're still in a pandemic. People want to think that we're out of it. There are places and people that are really still suffering. There's this kind of back and forth, this tug of war, this jerky feeling about this transition. And I want to talk a little bit about how we can smooth that out. How can we be in transition and not feel so pulled, like almost like we're being pulled apart. Like I feel like some days, I'm noticing, oh, that's my old belief again. Here's my old belief. And it feels a little bit like it's pulling me backwards, but yet I'm aware of it and I'm looking at it with new eyes. And that's part of this newness that I'm opening up to. So there's that kind of back and forth. And it got me thinking about music, which often happens. I was thinking about my college oboe professor, Sally Faulkner, and I was thinking about something that she taught me, so I want to share that, and then I want to kind of explain. So I took lessons with her once or sometimes twice a week for 3.5 years, and what we talked about in music a lot of times was our musical line. So I could sing a song for you, and I could be focused entirely on the vertical, and that might sound something like, Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. It's kind of jerky sounding, right? It's kind of like, So when we start to pay attention to the line, to the horizontal in music, the way we do that is that we pay attention to the transitions between the notes. So if I go, Mary had a little lamb, there's no transition between the notes. They're sort of just starting and stopping in a very vertical pattern. If I'm going to pay attention to my musical line, if I'm going to shape my musical line and have a horizontal kind of view rather than a vertical view, then that same line is going to sound something more like, Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. So that's a totally different, it's the same song, but it's a totally different sound because I'm paying attention to the direction of each note, the transition between each note. And that's such a valuable lesson that I learned from my professor, Dr. Faulkner, and it translates to life. So often, the lessons that we learn are not just in one area. So we talk a lot about the vertical in this practice. We're vertically connecting ourselves to the divine. We're vertically connecting to the earth. There's a vertical flow. But in terms of this transition, I want us to think about that horizontal flow. I want us to think about, I'm not necessarily here in space. I am. If I'm present, I'm very much vertically present. But I'm a product of my past, and I'm heading in a direction. And especially when you're transitioning, there's that back and forth that can be like, oh, what's happening here? And what happens in music is that there's something called a motif, there's a motif and we don't go into music theory, but if you have a motif, that's a little short phrase that recurs throughout a song or a piece in classical music. And what happens is there's forms. So maybe you're in this form at the beginning and then there's a different form. And part of the transition in the forms is that this little motif that you heard at the very beginning of the piece comes back here. So the music has completely changed. Sometimes it almost feels like a completely different piece of music. If you listen to much classical music, there's such transition in the music that you could be in the middle of a piece and not even recognize the beginning, except, da 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 da. There's your little motif there, da 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 da, and that comes back throughout the piece, and it smooths that transition. So when I'm looking at like, oh, this is this old belief about how I'm not worthy, or my body's not good enough, or my worth is tied to my body, that can feel like I'm moving backwards. It can feel like I'm not transitioning. But I can also look at it like, oh, there's that little motive. There's that little reminder of where I came from. And I can keep going to wherever it is that I'm headed. I can use that as a tool. I can use that as something that reminds me that I'm heading somewhere so I don't get discouraged. I can use that to smooth my transition. So instead of this jerky back and forth, oh, it's pulling me this way and now I'm this way, instead of feeling pulled back into the old belief, I can recognize, oh, I'm in a new form now. I'm in a totally different part of my composition. But oh, there's my little motive. It just came back. And I'll look at it. And it gives me a chance for awareness. It gives me the opportunity to remember and to be aware and to notice, oh, I am in transition because look, I didn't get pulled all the way back into that. I noticed it and I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. I don't really think that way anymore. I choose to let that go. And boop, there goes my motive. It just came back, da 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 da, oop, and now it's gone. And now the music has changed. That vertical versus horizontal, we live in both directions. And I think sometimes in spiritual work, we get really focused on the vertical. And it's very important. It's very important to be present. It's very important to be connected to that higher power, to be connected to the earth. But that flow, whenever I talk about flow, my body naturally kind of starts to flow in a horizontal direction. So we do have that vertical flow, of course, but there's also this horizontal flow. And to think of it, as we do sometimes in music, as a playful, there's a playful back and forth. Sometimes we have like a call and response, and it's like doodle-doo, 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 doodle-doo. So that old doodle-doo that I just made up, instead of thinking of that as a bad thing or a step backwards or, oh, I thought I was in this new space and I'm not, recognizing that it's just a natural part of that transitional dance and looking at it as a dance, looking at it as a flow. So I flow this way a little bit and then I remember, I find my awareness, oh, I decided I'm going to flow this way. There's never going to be one direction of movement. And that's true in music. Yes, we're moving forward. We're moving to the end of the piece. But there's also that motive that comes from the back that reminds us from our past. There's the vertical direction. There's volume. So like in music, the volume is kind of that vertical direction. And the musical line is that horizontal direction. And when you hear a really beautiful piece of music, all of that stuff works together and flows and creates that spontaneous flow that we're always looking for in our spiritual practice. So looking at that horizontal direction reminds us where we're heading so we don't forget that we're going somewhere, especially when we're trying to let go of old beliefs. We don't want to get pulled back all the way into the old belief. So paying attention to that musical line, that direction of flow, and letting it pull us kind of into the new, allows us to remember that we're headed somewhere, that this journey is going somewhere. And it's about the journey, not the destination. But it's nice to remember, I'm opening to this whole new way of thinking, and to be gentle with ourselves about that, of course. So how does this translate? Because I talked a lot about music and I feel like I talked a little bit about the spiritual flow and the direction. And so I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to do in the meditation and why this is so important. Why is transition important? First of all, we spend a heck of a lot of time in transition. I just said that the journey is the destination, which is something that people used to say all the time, and it would drive. I was like, it sounded like it didn't mean anything. What does that really mean? The journey is the destination. So what that means is that a lot of times we're on the journey, we're in transition, and we do reach points, like in a musical piece, you finish one movement and there's a pause. There's a transition from one movement to the next, but the piece isn't over. There's 3 more movements to go. So when we are in flow and we allow those transitions to happen smoothly, that translates to every part of our life. And it allows us to continue this growth journey without getting discouraged, and to recognize that yes, we're on this journey, we're in this transition. We spend a lot of time trying to let go, trying to get new things. And sometimes we're in this, like awkward space in between, but there's so much beauty in that. I talked a few weeks ago about finding the expansion, even in contraction. And this is a little bit like that. We're finding the flow in what sometimes feels like a herky-jerky transition period where you're kind of back and forth and you haven't quite found your footing yet in this new way of being, but there's still beauty in that. You know, if you have a child, we just talked about motherhood. What is one of the most exciting things for parents is when their child starts to walk. And your child doesn't just get up one day and run out the door and, join the track team. Like there's a lot of like stuttering and falling and getting up and down and trying kind of, and like maybe needing help and holding on to things. That's all transition. And we think that's so beautiful. We celebrate that when we see that in our children. So I encourage you to celebrate that in your spiritual journey, celebrate that in your emotional journey, and recognize that if you feel that, that kind of back and forth, like, am I here? I don't quite know. Introduce that horizontal direction into it. So the example I just used about a child learning to walk, so we don't get too caught up in them falling and getting up because we know eventually they're going to walk. We know what that horizontal direction is. We know where that is all headed. So we enjoy the journey. We enjoy their little triumphs and failures, and we know that ultimately they're going to get where they're going. And that's the thing about the spiritual journey. You're going to get where you're going because essentially you're already there. And at the end of your life, when you transition out of your body, all of this work that you've done, all of this journey, the heartache and the beauty and the flow and the joy, all of this is preparing you for that final journey when you let go, when you join my friend Sherry Ford. So tonight in our meditation, we're going to do a little bit of a two-part meditation. We're going to start out by focusing on the transitions within our own breath. And this is really, really powerful work. If you've not done a lot of breath work, this may be completely new to you. So as usual, I'm going to guide you through it. But essentially, in between each breath, there's this opportunity, there's this transition. And a lot of us take it for granted. We don't notice it. A lot of us hold or get stuck in the transitions between breath. And we can learn how to smooth that transition out. So when you breathe in, there's a little bit of a pause at the top of the breath there before you breathe out. And then there's a little bit of a pause before you breathe back in. And when you really get into flow, you can watch my hand, then that happens in a beautiful, natural way. And it almost starts to feel like someone is breathing for you. I did this beautiful guided meditation that I have on CD with Lama Surya Das, where he says, let Buddha breathe for you. So when you let go, when you really get into those transitions, what you'll notice is a lot of us, we're kind of holding our breath all the time and we're not really letting it out. And when we do let it out, we don't let it all the way out. So we're kind of, that's a big exaggeration, but we're kind of taking shallow breaths. They're herky-jerky, just like I was saying at the beginning, they're not smooth. And when we focus on the transitions, that breath naturally starts to smooth out. And it becomes much more of a flow. The transition smooths out and our entire experience smooths out. So we're going to do that at the beginning of the meditation to kind of get into that feeling of transition. And then we're just going to call on our higher self briefly and ask for guidance. What am I transitioning in my life? How can I make that transition more smooth? How can I make that less jerky and smoother? And we'll just check in and see what kind of intuitive information we get. And of course, because I never really plan the meditations, this one I actually have kind of a more concrete plan than I sometimes do. But Honestly, I never know exactly where it's going because I'm in the flow, and I let the transition be smooth when I'm in that meditative state. And that's the kind of thing that we're trying to bring into our everyday lives so that we cultivate this through our meditation practice so that at some point it permeates our entire life and the whole thing. We get the horizontal flow, that dance, we get the vertical flow, that connection, and everything starts to feel like a beautiful dance and a beautiful piece of music. So let us meditate together. Get yourself nice and comfortable. If you'd like tonight to lie down, let yourself do that. If you transition into sleep during this meditation, that's okay. Just get yourself into a nice, comfortable position. Let some part of your body contact the ground, whether it's your feet, your bottom, your entire back, whatever feels good to you tonight. And let's start with those 3 deep oxytocin breaths like we usually do. And take 2 more of those really deeply. Really sigh that out. Let go of any excess energy. Let go of anything you've been holding onto today. Let go of what happens tomorrow. Let yourself start to come into flow with me. I've already set up this beautiful horizontal flow that we can tap into tonight. And now we're going to do something a little different than what we usually do at the beginning of the meditation. I want you to completely let your breathing go. Try not to think about it at all. When I say don't think about it, you will, but just watch your breathing. Let yourself breathe and notice. Are you taking shallow breaths? Are you taking deep breaths? How are the transitions between your breaths? What does the top of your breath look like? Does it feel like you're kind of holding and stuck? Is there fear there? What about at the bottom of your breath? Are you really letting all your breath out? Just pay attention and notice. How does your breathing feel? And without trying to change anything here, just start to really pay attention to those transitions at the top and bottom of your breath. Notice if any feelings come up, let them come up. Take a break if you need to, cry if you need to. We hold a lot of emotional energy in those spaces between breaths. So just explore those. And again, don't try to control anything right now. Just let your breath come as it will. Noticing the top, that little space between the top and the bottom, and then same thing at the bottom. And now at the end of your out breath, really start to allow yourself to breathe all the way out here. As you breathe out, take an extra second or two. Make sure you've not just let go of breath, but feel energetically there's a releasing there that can happen at the end of your out breath. And then as you breathe back in, this is almost like a beautiful circle. You breathe in, there's a little bit of a pause, or an oval maybe, and then it comes down and you really release into the ground at the bottom, and then you're breathing back in. And now allow your breath to lengthen slightly. You can breathe in and out through the nose if you'd like. You can breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. Let your body do what it's calling for here. Breathing in, and then noticing now the top of that transition, that in-breath. Are you holding anything in that in-breath? Can you sip a little bit more air in at the top? before you start that release of the down breath, of the out breath, of the down flow of energy into the earth. And now start paying attention to, as you breathe in, drawing energy up from your feet, from the earth, through that transition, and then releasing the breath, the energy down and out into the earth. And now notice the transition here. Notice the smoothing of the breath, the letting go of that jerkiness, of that fear, and allowing this flow, this love, this transition to be smooth and relaxed. Continuing to pay attention to the transitions in between your breath, but now also allowing that top of your head, that beautiful crown chakra, to open, inviting energy in through the top of the head, into your face and your jaw, into your neck and your throat, especially as you're breathing out and down. As you breathe in, let yourself relax, and then as you breathe out, draw that energy down through the shoulders and the arms, the wrists and the hands, letting that go all the way down into the earth. And then breathing in, and as you breathe out, drawing that energy through the chest and the belly and the hips and the pelvis, and releasing all the way down into the earth. Allowing that in-breath to flow smoothly, and that transition as you breathe out, drawing that energy down into your legs and your knees and your calves and your feet, releasing all the way out into the earth. Breathing in, drawing energy up from the earth, and then that beautiful smooth transition of releasing and drawing energy in through the head as you breathe out. And as you breathe in, beautiful transition, and draw that energy in from the earth. Let it come into your body to the top of your head. And as you breathe out, drawing that energy in through the top of your head and down through the body and back into the earth. Noticing this beautiful transition we've attained just by breathing, just by paying attention to the breath. This beautiful motion, this flow, this transition, a vertical flow of energy. And then now moving into that horizontal flow, ask yourself, if you'd like to, you can draw your higher self to you. We've done this before. If you're new to that, it just means that you're connecting with the part of yourself that is of your soul, that is of source, that is of God, that is always looking out for your highest good and the highest good of all. Invite that self into your space now, into this room, into this physical body. Become one with your higher self for the next part of this meditation. Let yourself be fully connected to that divine source, to your soul, to your wisdom and intuition, to your higher self. And then introduce this horizontal flow and ask yourself, where am I in transition in my life? What am I letting go of? What am I leaving behind? What am I flowing into? Where am I headed? Energetically, emotionally, physically. And give yourself some space to find that answer. Let it come to you. And if nothing comes to you, that's always okay. Just continue to focus on your breathing, the transitions in that breath, and allow me to move that horizontal space in your space, just as I am in mine. Let that horizontal flow open up. Let that direction, that beautiful musical line that leads us through each note, through the beginning and end of each note in the beautiful musical piece that is our life journey. Feel that flow now. Let it come into your space. And notice that each one of these notes is the perfect shape, and it smoothly connects to the next note. Each part of your life has built off what has come before, what came before, and heads in the direction of what is coming next. That beautiful momentum, that forward flow into the new, into what we can open to, into more expansion and more love and more joy and more bliss. Let that be your horizontal direction. Let that pull you into this new way of being in love, of being in joy. Let the motives from the past come into your vision. See them, be aware of them, thank them for teaching you what you have learned in order to continue moving forward into further expansion, into more love, into more growth. And as you connect into this flow, again, ask your highest self, how can I smooth my transitions in life? How can I smooth the transition I'm in right now? What can I do to serve my highest good in this transition, in this period of allowing myself to move forward, to honor the past, to look at the past, but to let it go as I move forward, as I expand and grow and move into the next chapter of my life, the next movement in my musical piece. I open to my path. I walk my path smoothly. I allow myself to grow. I honor my past. I move forward to my future. I expand into my future. I am in flow. I am in flow. Tune in once more to your highest self and ask for any wisdom to come to you now, any messages from your soul, from your highest self. Anything further about transition, anything about anything else. Open yourself fully now, knowing that you are connected to that divinity within you, to that divinity within our earth, and to that divine source of all that is. Take a few more breaths here. Notice how your breathing has shifted. Notice the transitions between your breath. Have they smoothed out any? And of course, you can always come back to this practice and And as you do, that smoothness will grow. That feeling of flow will grow. That feeling of effortless transition will grow. And you will feel that you are moving forward into that next phase of your life with grace and joy and beauty. And you will recognize that you are love and that you are loved. Take a few more oxytocin breaths here. Notice the shift in your body, in your emotional state, in your mental state. If you'd like, you can gently allow that crown chakra to close or leave it open and connected for your highest good. And once more, as you breathe in, draw energy up from the earth and through your legs and your hips and your torso and your head, all the way out to that divine source. And as you breathe out, draw that divine energy back down into your head, through your neck and your torso and your hips and your legs and your feet. Let that vertical flow, let that vertical transition happen between each breath. A world to be seen between each breath. A lifetime to experience between each breath. Let go of your breath now. Let that divine energy breathe for you. Let this smoothness stay with you throughout the rest of this evening and this week. As you're ready, very slowly and with reverence, begin to move your body in whatever way feels good to you. Affirm with me out loud, I am fully present in my body. I am fully present in my body, and I notice the transitions in my life. I am fully present in my body, and I transition smoothly in all areas of my life. Wiggling your fingers and toes, rolling the wrists and ankles if you'd like. Take one or two more deep breaths here as you're ready. Let go of anything else that you can in this moment. Allow yourself to transition smoothly back into the physical world here as you open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Thank you so much for your willingness to be open to this practice, to serve yourself and others as we practice together each week. Have a beautiful rest of your evening, a beautiful rest of your week. Honor the mother within you and others. And I will see you next week for Wind Down Wednesday.